Hi there and welcome to the SkanFest Podcast. I'm your host, Joe Lee. This is an interview series for the Skaneateles Festival. We're a summer concert series based in the Finger Lakes region of upstate New York. This year, we're presenting our 47th season. On the podcast, we spend time getting to know our visiting artists who travel the world making music of the highest caliber. Edinburgh-born harpist and composer Maeve Gilchrist has been credited as an innovator on her native instrument and taken the Celtic harp to new levels of performance and visibility. She has performed and recorded with such luminaries as Yo-Yo Ma, Frankie Gavin, Esperanza Spalding, and Bruce Molsky, and she tours internationally as a solo artist and composer, as well as being a member of the multidisciplinary quartet Edges of Light, and as a part of the Grammy-nominated Silkroad Ensemble, which will be joining us at SkanFest on August 21st at the Vine Theater at Del Lago Resort and Casino in Waterloo, New York. Welcome, Maeve. How you doing?
I'm doing great. Delighted to talk to you, Joe.
Great. Thanks so much for joining us and for allowing our festival goers a chance to get to know you a little better. Want to jump right into your instrument, which I think is a very interesting. It's a very beautiful looking and beautiful sounding instrument. How did you and when did you begin to gravitate to this instrument?
Well, we joke in my family that it's a family affliction. So I grew up in Edinburgh, Scotland. My dad's from Scotland, from Glasgow, but my mother is from Tipperary in Ireland. And there's music on both sides, but my mother's family are rich in traditional music. Two of my aunts are professional harpers. I've got cousins who are harp players. So, we joke that someday someone has to get a real job, or at least a smaller instrument. But it was very around me, and I grew up with folk music in the house. I learned music by ear. It was an oral tradition. And the harp was on my radar, not just because it was on my mother's side within the family in Ireland, but also because in the traditional music scene in Scotland, the harp is a popular instrument. It's a dominant voice within the context of traditional Scottish music. So it was in schools, it was available. And that feels important because in North America, there's not a traditional harp scene. There's not a folk tradition of harp playing. So the only route to the harp in this country is the Western classical pedal harp. Beautiful instrument, but very expensive and very hard to get a hold of. So it was much more around in my household, and I was lucky that my parents' circle of friends contained many musicians, and there was the opportunity from when I was 8 and got given my first harp to be making music immediately with other people, learning to play while learning to connect with others through music. And there's such joy involved with that relationship with music. Within folk music, it exists purely as a connective device. And I was a social child, so the idea of being stuck in a practice room for hours by myself every day wouldn't have worked for my personality type. But this just kind of easy relationship with music in the house really got me into playing, and that joy of collaboration and musical conversation has definitely stuck with me.
So the interest of your parents and having it be such a big part of your culture is what drew you to it. What were your friends listening to at the time?
That's a great question because people often assume that as I talk of my awareness and experience of traditional music that it was all around me. But I went to a very regular public high school. Well, I should say I actually attended this fantastic council-funded music school called the City of Edinburgh Music School, but it was attached to a very regular public school of around 1,000 kids, and I'd say 99% of them had no idea of the traditional music that was happening. They would have to take, there was an obligatory course of ceilidh dancing, set dancing in school that people groaned around or groaned about. But my home music life was very separate to my friends at school, and I think now they'd probably think it was so cool, but at the time I kept it on the DL a little bit.
You didn't want to seem uncool. I'm trying to figure out what was playing on the radio at that time, and how does a
Spice
young
Girls.
girl, yeah, Spice
All the
Girls.
way.
So how
Yeah.
does a young girl not be pulled into the direction of the Spice Girls? And I think
Well-
it's because of the sort of the family connection to this music and this part of your culture.
Yes, and I would also say I was also drawn to I was not drawn to the Spice Girls, and I had a poster of Oasis and Blur on my wall at home. But this kind of musically omnivorous environment was also part of home life, because my father was a music critic, and he loved traditional music actually, and that was his initial route into musical journalism and critiquing. But he also loved jazz, particularly the European jazz label ECM and that kind of world music infused jazz. He listened to a lot of classic rock from the 70s. He introduced us to Ravi Shankar, into American minimalism and serialism, and so there was all kinds of stuff on the speakers at home.
That's fantastic. Dad sounds like a very interesting guy. You guys, you've referred to, so there's a difference in reference to harper versus harpist, and is it that the folks that play Celtic harp refer to themselves as harpers, and the larger orchestral harpist?
I'm not really sure what the current wording or appropriate wording is in classical scenes. I just kind of changed it over, in a bid to move away from a more gendered assumption of harpists and harp playing. As other professions in the world have kind of changed their wording, I just kind of did it along with that. But I have no strong preference, and sometimes I'll call myself a harpist, sometimes a harper. Yeah.
The instrument itself looks complicated, but I read that it's not terribly difficult to learn to play. Is that true?
I would say it certainly isn't any more difficult than any other instrument. And I think that probably most instruments have their challenges and the things that they kind of really bring naturally. And I think something that the harp has, which can make it a really appealing instrument to learn, is you immediately get a beautiful sound. It's difficult to sit at the instrument and not produce a lovely sound, which is very different, of course, than the violin or the cello, where you're scratching away for a number of years before you get the sound that you want. It's a delightful instrument to learn, and a lot of people that I teach nowadays are mature learners. They come to the harp later on. But I wish it was more available in this country to kids, because I think it's a great instrument to get kids playing, without this period of industry before they get any sound that they like.
Right, and it has such a storied history, a very long history. It's been prevalent in society for quite a long time, right?
Oh, across the globe, wherever there's written history, documentation of any kind, there's some kind of harp-like instrument, some kind of piece of wood with strings attached, or a gourd with strings attached, and certainly in the Celtic Isles, at this point, it's really kind of an icon of the resilience of that culture. Within Ireland, it was outlawed for a long period of time. It was deemed too stirring in the spirits of the people, that the harpists were hung in Ireland during the initial English occupation.
Interesting. At what point in your early life did you say, I'm going to master this and I really want to make this a part of my career?
I don't know as a kid or as a young teenager if I ever said I will be a musician, but I think it was very clear to the people around me and my mentors and the people who had influence in my life, and I just knew that I loved it, and I knew that I had an ease with the instrument that I noticed perhaps some of my peers struggled more with, and that easy relationship with the instrument made it a very joyful, unpressured relationship. And And towards the end of high school, my head of music at the City of Edinburgh Music School suggested Berklee. He knew that I was getting very interested in jazz as kind of a natural extension of some of the improvisation that's involved in traditional music accompaniment and approach to tune variations and so on. So I was starting to get into learning about the colours and the harmony of jazz, and he suggested Berklee as a place where I could pursue that interest, but also they have a lot of resources geared towards different world music cultures. I could meet people from other places in the world that played similar instruments, and so I went. And actually I wasn't a major on the harp at that time. I was a vocal major and I played some piano, but I very quickly realised that there are many fantastic singers in the world and I'd never be one of them. And Berklee was very flexible in starting to let me bring the harp to horn labs and percussion labs. And at the same time I was meeting these harp players from Colombia and Venezuela who played this very different, very driving, dynamic kind of music. And it really made me kind of turn back to where I'd come from with a whole new lens on what my traditional music was and how I could carry that with me.
Did that experience sort of encourage you to push beyond traditional boundaries with the instrument? I know you are sort of pushing across genres with the harp. Do you credit that experience with allowing you to go beyond the traditional sound?
It certainly made me a better musician, and it opened my ears. I don't think I've ever held the boundaries that are often talked about, or that are used commonly for marketing purposes. They've always kind of been things that have been brought up within the press, positively or negatively when talking about me, kind of depending on where I was at in my career. But during that time, it was such a fluid, intense few years of just musical absorption. And I think it took me a while after college to kind of filter through a lot of those ideas and kind of find my own voice. But yes, certainly my whole musical experience, from my upbringing in the traditional music scene, through my curiosity into other genres, through my education at Berklee, through moving to New York and meeting these fabulous musicians across many genres and scenes, it's absolutely all contributed towards the way I hear, process, and make music.
That's great. When you consider your career up to date, are there moments in the career, in your performances, collaborations, that stand out as some of your favorites? Tell us about that.
Oh, yeah. Gosh, too many to mention. I mean, it's been... The instrument itself has been such a blessing to me because it's what's brought me from one side of the world to another and gifted me an intro to these musical words and artistic scenes that I don't think I ever would have dreamed of, that I would have been part of or able to access. What are some of my favorite collaborations? Gosh, they're all my favorite when I'm in them. I think as I started to get more and more into improvisation, getting to observe and play with people like Ambrose Akinmuseri, the trumpet player, Esperanza Spalding. There were some of these improvisers. Jamie Haddad actually was a real mentor to me at college. He still plays with Paul Simon Band. He played with Nancy Wilson for years, and he was one of the first musicians who really took me under his wing and saw beyond the initial sound of the harp. People often get kind of starry-eyed with the timbre of the instrument, and they hear the kind of superficial beauty of it, but it took me a while before people really held me accountable as a musician rather than a harpist. And Jamie was one of the first to say, oh yeah, the instrument sounds great, but you really need to firm up this and this and this, and you need to understand subdivision so that you can relate to other instruments, because you may have some harmonic limitations on your instrument, but you have no rhythmic limitations. And he really taught me that rhythm and understanding rhythm and being able to be very confident in my own sense of time in order to be very generous in my collaboration with other musicians, that is the glue to making music with other people and the thing that injects a life force, I think, into music. So Jamie Haddad was incredibly influential. Right out of college, I was hired by the fiddle player Daryl Anger, who's a known name in the kind of new acoustic bluegrass scene or progressive bluegrass scene that was happening in the 70s and 80s here, and still is this huge blossoming scene pioneered by people like the right now by the Punch Brothers, Chris Seeley, but back then Sam Bush, Bela Fleck, Daryl Anger, and Mike Marshall. And he put together this completely wacky band that was me on Celtic harp, Nick Garris, this incredible percussive dancer who almost plays the role of a drum kit, or he's really a musician in his approach to music. We had the incredible cellist Rashad Eggleston, Daryl's wife, Emmy, at the time was singing with the band. Brittany Haas was playing fiddle. Daryl was playing fiddle. It was this incredible eclectic band that he brought to all these jam band festivals. So for a few summers, I toured that way, and I met many folks involved with the American folk scene. I met Bruce Molsky, who I started to play with for years. And again, all of these experiences just enriched my understanding of music in general, and again made me look at where I come from and be able to illuminate and utilize my own tradition in deeper ways. And then when I moved to New York, I through Silkroad and then just through being in New York, I met some incredibly fine classical musicians, very fine, very curious classical musicians, people like the Brooklyn Rider String Quartet, the Azuri String Quartet. And around that time, I was starting to get my first larger scale compositional commissions. And I'm so grateful to those people for helping me along the way. I remember my first large commission was there was a symphony orchestra in North Carolina called the what was it, the West? It was based in Hickory. I can't remember the exact name of the orchestra. And one of the board members was an avid harpist and lover of all things harp, and she called to say, would you ever be interested in writing a concerto for symphony orchestra and harp? And I was thinking to myself, well, I have no idea how to write a concerto for symphony orchestra and harp, but it doesn't sound like something you say no to. So I said right. I would, and they very smartly paired me up with a composer in the area called Luke Benton. And for 2 years we worked on this piece, and during the process of that piece I started to ask a lot of questions within the scene that was available to me in New York, and from there I started to write for string quartet, and it's an ongoing process. And I'm approaching these compositions really as a novice of understanding Western classical music, but through my friendships and professional experience with these people, it's given me such confidence to use what I have and share with other musicians, use what you have. Like this is what makes your voice unique and authentic, and yes, and to some degree important, because the more voices, the more unique voices, the different voices that we can hear, the richer all of our worlds.
The common thread through all of those seems to be they were opportunities where you really embraced growth. And so how do you see, or how do you want your career to grow from this point forward? Or are you nailing it and you got it all? Or you're just,
I think I'm hanging on by a thread, Joe, constantly. But I will say that it's all felt so organic, and that's given me such faith in where the universe will take me. There's been various points in my career where I think I thought, and the people around me thought, I'd be doing very different things than I am now. And in my younger years, I think I found it more of a struggle to try and, be what people wanted me to be, or fit into certain brackets for marketing purposes or strategic career planning. And I feel like the last 10 years, I kind of just let go of a lot of that. And it's been incredibly rewarding. There's so much work that I still feel I have to do in my own compositional voice, in my music making, in my world building. That's become very important to me these days, not just the music, but poetry, spoken word, recording, multimedia projects. Some of the artists that have been most inspiring to me in recent years are those who've really approached the artist's life through a variety of mediums, and I found that a very joyful approach to music making. Life is extraordinarily busy managing different projects. I have a 2-year-old daughter.
Wow.
But it's very rich. So right now I'm happy. I feel so grateful to have the work coming in, to have new projects to be writing for, to have existing collaborations to go deeper with. And with all of them, the deeper we go, the richer the product, the richer the musical and artistic world.
Well, no pressure, but I'm looking forward to you doing all of those things. So get started. So let's talk a little bit about Silkroad. Silkroad Ensemble. You'll be appearing with them here in Skaneateles in August. How did you get connected with the Silkroad Ensemble?
I was first hired by Silkroad back in, I think, 2016, to be a guest instructor and performer at GMW, their Global Musicians Workshop, which still runs every year. It's now hosted by New England Conservatory in Boston, but at the time it was at DePaul University in Indiana, I think. I forget exactly where that is. And that's been one of Silkroad's really successful initiatives, headed up by the cellist Mike Block. It's a musical summer camp, a week long, that invites students from all over the world to collaborate with one another, mainly in ensemble settings. It attracts a lot of really high-level playing students, people who are undergrads and graduate students, young professionals, and the emphasis is as much on the philosophy behind the notes as it is the music itself. Why are we doing this? How are we approaching this cross-cultural collaboration? How can we allow our individual voices to really sing while creating something bigger than the sum of our parts? And it's, Mike Block and everyone involved every year have done phenomenal jobs in not just a successful camp, but creating this community, which is now all over the world. And I can't tell you how many performances I've done across the globe where GMW participants, past and present, have come, and you see them leave this week feeling so uplifted, feeling like anything is possible. In fact, just this spring, I was commissioned to write a new trio piece for a new band, I guess, in Scotland, a trio of Northern Irish percussionist, an English Celtic harp player, and a Chinese zheng player, the Chinese zither. And they were a group that got together in Boston at the Global Musicians Workshop and went on to perform in the UK and are creating an album now. So it's doing real things, and it's a really exciting week. So I was there, and I was so taken with the whole thing and just the spirit of the event. And from there, Silkroad started to hire me for performances. But it was really in the pandemic, actually, when there was a big shift in the organisation and Rhiannon Giddens came on as our artistic director, that I think I had space, like we all did, in our schedules, literally, like physically, the space and time to kind of recommit to the organisation and the collective, and get excited about it. And right now, I would say, is an incredibly exciting time for Silkroad. There's energy, there's a kind of a new vigor in our approach to community engagement while touring. The Sanctuary program that we're bringing to Skaneateles is a really uplifting, heartwarming program. It's a good time to come and see Silkroad.
Yeah, when I listen to Silkroad, I feel like I'm being taken on an emotional journey. And I get so involved in listening to the music. But if someone were to approach me who is not familiar with Silkroad and ask, what do they do and who are they, I'd have trouble responding. So for some of the folks that'll be coming to the festival that may be encountering you all for the first time, how would you describe the ensemble and the music?
So the Silkroad Ensemble is a collective of exceptional musicians from across the globe, both musicians coming from the Western classical tradition and a variety of musicians from different musical traditions across the globe. When Yo-Yo Ma founded the ensemble, he founded the collective with this idea that cross-cultural musical collaboration can create more harmony in the world. And that sounds like a lofty statement, but right now, the way that Sanctuary is touring, it feels truer than ever. Rarely does the whole collective tour at the same time. There's about 30 odd members now. The Sanctuary program was Rhiannon Giddens' initiative, and it brings about, I can't remember, 10, 12 musicians on stage. Each musician is bringing a composition that comes from their own musical world, traditionally or imaginatively. And we work together very closely in conversation to arrange the music and bring it to life. It's a program rooted in the idea that we, as a performance experience, want to create a safe place to transport audience members, allow them to feel what they feel, bring together people from different backgrounds, and leave them feeling joyful and hopeful. And, this is one of the first programs that we really attacked with a lot of workshopping time. Again, this was really important to Rhiannon. If we're going to preach this, the impact that this type of collaboration can have, we really need to have familiarity with one another and understand one another. And I don't believe there's a quick fix to that. So we spent a lot of time in conversation, talking about our lives, about our backgrounds, bringing music to the table and saying, what do you think of this? How does this sit on your instrument? What feels good? What sounds good? How can we create a tapestry of our respective voices in a way that creates something cohesive? And along the way, we had Alicia Robinson, our unbelievable programs manager at Silkroad, planning these really in-depth community engagements. In every city that we bought Sanctuary, we've been connecting with the community via libraries, music schools, immigrant relief centres. There's plans for work with refugee communities, non-profit, everything you can think of. Thinking about how can we go in and tour in a way that's additive to the communities. How can we make impact? How can we give access to those who can't afford tickets? And this whole approach has brought us as an ensemble closer together. It's kind of reminded us why we're doing this, because it's easy to forget when you're on the road. But why we're doing this is because I don't think there's anything like music that can create such immediate emotional impact.
Yes.
And we want to make that something that anybody can connect to and say, that's mine. Music is not just for those who can afford a festival ticket. Music is for that little girl who didn't know that she had the opportunity of music, to understand that her voice is her music, and give her an opportunity to explore that and leave inspired. I think I've went on a tangent, Joe.
No, that was a beautiful tangent. I mean, it is how I feel when I'm listening to Silkroad. You gave me the perfect response for if someone asked me about it. What part of the program, or what kind of program, will be coming to us in August?
So this same program that I'm talking about, Sanctuary, is what we're presenting in August. It's a really fantastic group of artists, and our guests with the ensemble for this trip are the Italian musician Mauro Duranti, who's from Salento in Italy, who brings his pizzica tradition, which is this incredible, hypnotic, trance-like music. We also have Mehdi Nassouli from Gnawa, from the Gnawa tradition in Morocco, bringing joy, bringing movement. You can't stay in your seat when Mehdi's playing. And we're supporting them with the ensemble, and then every member in the ensemble has bought in a piece of their own to share that's been arranged and kind of reimagined with all of the ensemble members. We've got Sandeep Das from India on tabla. We've got Kaoru Watanabe, an incredible Japanese-American taiko and flautist. Maz Swift, an amazing non-binary African-American violinist, singer, and composer who will literally be conducting the audience at one point in the show. And we have Karen Ozoni on cello, Sean Connolly on bass. I'll be playing my Celtic harp. I'm praying I've not forgotten. Oh, Haruka Fuji playing percussion and marimba. Haruka's an amazing Japanese musician who comes from the Western classical tradition, but in Japan, her mother was a famous marimba player. So that's the group, and we'll be taking you on an emotional, musical, I'd say cinematic journey that involves voices, instruments, words, movement. So we hope to transport the audience.
It sounds like you will. I'm really looking forward to it. And what is next for Maeve Gilchrist?
Sorry, I forgot the great guitarist Newell Tsumbi from the Congo, living in Ireland. What's next for Maeve Gilchrist?
Yes. What are you looking forward to?
In the next 10 minutes, I hope to go to the gym before I pick up my daughter. But this week, I'm heading to the Somerset Harp Festival in New Jersey to teach and play. I'm heading to Spain in a couple of weeks to play my first solo performance of a suite of music that I wrote in residence last year at the Catspan Arts Center in Tivoli, New York. It's called 12 Dances. So I'm busy practicing for that. The festival that I direct in Rockport, Massachusetts is coming up in September, the Rockport Celtic Festival. So it's I'm finishing 2 albums which will be out next year, 12 Dances, and one with my duo partner Seamus Egan, a fantastic Irish musician and sound designer. So lots on the books, lots to look forward to.
There is a lot on the books. You sound very busy and exciting, and we really appreciate your time. Maeve Gilchrist will join us along with Rhiannon Giddens and Silkroad Ensemble this August 21st at Del Lago Resort and Casino. To learn more about our 47th season and to buy tickets, please visit SkanFest.org. Maeve, thank you very much for spending some time with us today.
You're so welcome. Thanks for having us, and we're so looking forward to the concert on the 21st.
We'll see you then.